Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hail Yes, a Detroit Free Press podcast about University of Michigan athletics. I'm Tony Garcia, Michigan beat writer for The Free, joined by our Big Ten insider, Nick Saban, and we are coming to you in the Sheraton Grand in downtown Los Angeles. You can see the blue sunny sky sort of behind me, depends how I move my head. There it is. And not that we've gotten to spend a ton of time out there. It's 11 a.m. local, and we've been meeting with coaches and players from both teams all morning because we're here for the Rose Bowl, and it's just about that time. The full day one is today. The introductions were yesterday. Reiner, are you feeling introduced and acclimated to Los Angeles?
Yeah, I had a great meal in Koreatown last night. Really enjoyed it. Also got to enjoy the full LAX experience with the Uber shuttle to a vast parking lot where I picked up the Uber. It was a reminder that LAX is a beast not to be messed with.
Yes, I thought I was clever in avoiding that. Flew into Orange County because it was closer to Disney, where our arrival event was. And so I thought I was being quite cheeky. Just going to grab a rental car, head on over there. And we did. We made it all the way to the parking lot. And then the kind Disney attendant directed me to go in to the exit, pulled my rental car over the spikes and blew all my tires. So
really?
That was my walk to LA. Yeah. You didn't know this yet? Yeah.
No. I had a reporter who did that and told me about that, and he told me the story about the attendant was like, no. It was like one of those slow things.
I wish
it happened to him. Yeah.
I was improperly directed, and let me tell you, I was not very professional afterward. I dialed it down, and we got it together. But it was such a brutal way to start the trip. But okay, that was a couple more.
Did you you got the car replaced? I guess. Yeah.
It's just been towed. It has been towed away. It's a problem for future Tony. Now everybody gets to laugh at my expense in the same way my family and friends often do. But other than that, it's been a great time, and we're just and it's all uphill from there. And so today is not about my car troubles, actually, as much as it may seem like it. It is about sort of day one storylines that we are seeing and feeling around both Michigan, number 1 Michigan, number 4 Alabama, as they prepare for the Rose Bowl on January 1. And Reiner, for me, the storyline that caught my eye, I would say is about sign stealing. Again, I thought that we had reached a point where it was tabled, not yet resolved, of course, because the NCAA has not weighed in. But it seemed as if in this season, we had water had found its level, and we were going to get through to the offseason and then see what happened. Not so much. Alabama wide receiver Isaiah Bond told me, let slip, certainly, that Alabama has not been watching film on individual iPads. They have only been watching as a team at the facility, and that's a notable development.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it adds another layer to this, I guess, scandal that's been tabled, so to speak. I mean, that Alabama's taking this level of precaution as it relates to Michigan, and maybe their fears, whether they're justified or not, to do so. But it seems like, again, Nick Saban is one of those people that, having covered him, he'll account for every possibility or situation that he feels may affect his team, and so he's concerned about football espionage carrying over into this way of breaking into their signals or their playbook, or getting their kind of beat on what they're trying to do. And so I think it's an interesting layer added to this whole situation in this game itself.
Yeah, so talk to wide receiver Isaiah Bond, running back Jason McClellan, quarterback Jalen Milroe, and offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, just to try to get a sense of this, right? Because one guy's saying something, you need to, ask other people their effect and their understanding of it. And it seems to me that it's as you said, it's sort of better be safe than sorry, right? What Isaiah Bond said is that they have a system called Catapult, and he said allegedly Michigan coaches or Michigan staffers, someone within Michigan's realm, had gotten access to that, which contains information about Alabama's practices and films, and that's where you could really see, tweaks or different changes and things that are happening. And also it has, just distance, power, metrics, right? Like all the size and strength.
Yeah, I wrote it when I was covering Alabama. I wrote a whole story about how they use the catapult system. I wrote a really long story about that. They actually use it for injury recovery purposes to get guys back quicker than you would expect. They use baselines to try to get these guys to judge how far they've advanced in their recovery and rehabilitation. Very interesting usage of the system. They clocked, Kenyon Drake back in the day running like 22.5 miles per hour on that system, like when he returned the kickoff against Clemson in the 2015 championship game. And so they've used this system for a while. It's interesting that they're a little bit concerned about the security of it, and that some other program could possibly hack into it.
It's now been pretty widely adopted.
What? Yeah.
Right?
No. Most. At the time, I think Jimbo Fisher, and I remember writing that Florida State was really the first college program to use it. Obviously, Jimbo was the work for Nick Saban, and so that's probably how he got a beat on it. And then he started to use it, and then they took it a step further, again using their training and medical staff to be able to use it to get guys back quicker than possible. Like they would be able to assess how explosive they were, whether they could cut at the same force level as they were before, like an ankle injury. So they were able to expedite rehabilitation and recovery at the time, which I thought was really interesting. It made for an interesting story, but it's just weird that now it's come back up all these years later with this whole Michigan situation
in this way, right?
Absolutely.
For their own purposes. Yeah, it is, and it's fun. It's, I don't know, funny is the right word, but it's just amazing how quickly things move, right? How state of the art and cutting edge that was 8 years ago, and now everybody has it, and to the point where a team is concerned that an outside program can just easily hack into it, or however they may determine that. And so I think, Reiner, is this I guess my question is this something or nothing? Because for me, it is something, just in the fact that, you and I have talked about it on this podcast and in print. Nick Saban, 6-1 in college football playoff semifinals, 6 straight wins. And part of that is knowing how to handle this off time, right? Jim Harbaugh has been adjusting how Michigan has been spending these past few weeks, right? Less physical, more mental. They've been talking about the mental days, the added film time, the like when you're going full speed, when you're doing walkthroughs and all those things. Alabama players for the last few weeks have only been allowed to watch film at the facility. That just, that limits what you do. Like, I've been asking other players like Blake Hormer or whatever, like, hey, like, how do you rest in your downtime? Like when you're at home or whatever. A lot of them say, even when they're watching the NFL or gaming with their buddies or whatever, they will still have their iPad and have their film next to them. I'm pretty floored that Alabama is not doing that.
Well, but they also, you log more hours probably at the facility because you don't have school during that period of time anyway. So you're probably going to stay there, so they don't have those commitments on the academic side. And then secondly, there's actually possibly a residual benefit of doing that because you're probably watching your film with your position coach, and actually, as Nick Saban tends to do. Nick Saban tends to do. Just again, from my experience covering him, he sometimes takes a disadvantage and turns it into an advantage. And so maybe that's where they're trying to get the advantage. It's like, hey, we've got all these guys in the facility. There's buy-in. There's no distractions, and you're watching it with the expert. Your position coach. The coordinator. Nick Saban in general. If they're having team-wide film session.
They
So
are
yeah, I
having
think,
team. They're not just doing like running backs are not just watching running back film, and wide receivers are not watching wide receiver film. Is what McClellan said.
yeah. Well, I mean, in that case, I mean, I think it's potentially beneficial where you're getting one voice and people saying like this is what you need to watch for instead of people drawing their own conclusions off the film. And so I think, as far as Saban goes, again, he usually can find some way to turn something that may be a negative into a positive. And so I think in this case,
didn't we hear another coach saying that line earlier this year? Something about negatives and positives.
Jim Hart. Yeah, I mean, that's what the best coaches do. I mean, they do that. I mean, again, Saban's really mastered this period of time. I mean, going back to the loss in 2014 to Ohio State. I mean, you didn't feel like the team was prepared in the right frame of mind. They were focused on possibly going to the NFL and early entrance. And so he's kind of locked down that aspect of it since then. That first loss in 2014 in the semifinal kind of recalibrated what Alabama likes to do during this period. And, henceforth, they've been pretty successful, 6-1, 6 straight wins in the semifinals. And since that loss. And so I think, again, I don't know if this is really going to make much of a difference as far as their preparation level. I just, feel like, Saban's got to beat on this situation, and really more of the emphasis is on whether Harbaugh can actually, overcome his, 1-6 bowl record. And again, this period of time, whether he found the right balance between too much, work before or not enough, and trying to find that ramp up to the game itself.
Good seamless transition into what I would identify as sort of the other main storyline of day one, or sort of how it felt to me today, which maybe is probably no surprise. Big Ten versus SEC. There was a lot of talk about that today as well. And like you say, like Saban has a beat on this, right? It's up to Harbaugh to prove it. I mean, Harbaugh is Michigan, Saban is Bama. They both represent their programs, right? And you got Michael Barrett saying, I mean, he's now played in 3 of these. He's a 6-year guy. I mean, he saw that Tide team in 19. I mean, you can see, like, when you ask him about it, you can still see that he's seeing ghosts. I mean, with with just all the speed and talent with Waddle and different playmaking, Devontae Smith, the playmakers they had on the outside. But now it's about, is this just going to be another year of luck? The SEC is the SEC and the Big Ten can't hang? Or is this the year that Michigan can flip the script? Like, take Rod Moore, for example, right? We asked him about that, and he said, I don't think SEC speed is even a thing. He's like, everyone's got speed. Fortunately for him, he's fast, so he can't say that. But SEC speed is a thing. Yes.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, again, saw it firsthand. No, I mean, it is. I mean, you got guys that run especially on the edges, that are running 4 or 5 closing speed. There is a lot of that, and like every team has a couple of those guys, and there is. I mean, that's really revealed up front is where you see that, and especially on the edges, the outside linebackers. The inside linebackers too, being able to track the speed. And Reuben Foster, when I at Alabama, was I mean, he was a dynamo. I mean, it was boom. I mean, he's closing in on you quickly. I mean, Tim Williams was like that off the edge for them. And again, the SEC speed thing is a real thing. I mean, again, there's a couple of teams in the Big Ten that has similar traits, I guess. Ohio State for sure. I mean, Michigan up until recently didn't have that kind of speed. I think they've done a great job of improving that. Again, it goes back to the fact that they recognized that Michigan's defense was not equipped to play these bigger teams and bigger, faster teams, and that's part of what inspired the defensive scheme switch. Which again is something I've probably you'll see in the paper about their move towards this defense and a bigger front. I mean, again, the last time they played last time Michigan played Alabama in the Citrus Bowl in 2019, McCarlow Kemp was the defensive tackle. He was a 280-pound guy in the middle, and now in the NFL he translated to a outside linebacker position. I mean, now you've got Kenneth Grant, 339 pounds, who can move quickly. You got Mason Graham, quick twitch guy, big guy, fire a plug in the middle. I mean, they've got players that look like they played in the SEC. I asked Tommy Reese about that. And he said, yeah, it looks comparable to what you see in the SEC. And they had to get to that level. And part of it is because Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter have seen what it looks like in the NFL. And who was the general manager for the Baltimore Ravens? It was Ozzie Newsome. Ozzie Newsome's an Alabama guy. He also was at the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns had Bill Belichick and Nick Saban. And it all goes back to that. And Bill Parcells is always bigger is better. We're going to have a 3-4 line. You're going to have stout D ends and a big monster in the middle at the nose tackle. And you're going to have big linebackers, big, heavy inside linebackers. And so that's the model. And Michigan started.
It's building from the inside. It's building from the inside out, which is what Michigan has followed. But where they have not, it seemingly is that speed on the outside, right? Like they have tight ends, sure, running backs, sure, linemen, absolutely, maybe on the defensive side of the ball, they are getting that level of talent. With Will Johnson, right? And those sorts of things. But it's the wide receiver speed on the outside. It's the Roman Wills. I mean, obviously he's very quick, and Ronnie Bell's a really good player who developed very well. Nice piece, right? These aren't These are not game wreckers, game changers. That's what we talk about with SEC speed, right? People at every position, bigger, stronger, faster. And you're right. And Michigan has built it up from the middle going out, and I think they match up damn well, right, with Alabama across the board.
Defensively, I think they do. I think defensively,
as you start expanding and getting out, the farther away from the middle of the field you go, the more question marks there almost are.
Yeah, I think defensively they match up well. Offensively, I think less so. I mean, I think that's where. I mean, the question is whether they're, again, outside skill position players for Michigan can go up against those DBs and create separation and do that, and whether the linebackers, the tight ends can get out, and whether Michigan's going to be conflicted. We'll probably get to this in a future podcast, but again, whether they're going to have to max protect and ward off the Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell on the edges, or do they send those tight ends out in space, because they're going to have to probably create some things in the passing game with the tight ends, given the potential problems they may face on the outside with the two corners with Alabama. So it's a dilemma in some ways for Michigan that they're going to have to resolve before this game about how they want to use the tight ends.
You're right. We're going to get to the offense when we talk to Michigan's offense more, but there is no team in America that is going to line up against Alabama and be like, oh, we feel great, right? I mean, Georgia doesn't. They just lost, and if Georgia doesn't, then no one will. But it's not 2019. It's not where it looks like junior varsity.
Yeah, and it's not 2016 Alabama where they had 11 guys drafted off the defense and they all looked incredible and they had 10 defensive scores. I mean, where they're just picking off a pass or recovering a fumble, a sack fumble, and go into the end zone. And it was just like a party in the end zone every week for Alabama's defense back then. And again, part of that is because Kirby's built up the program in the SEC to siphon off some of that talent. I mean, the depth isn't quite as strong as what it used to be at Alabama. And so, I mean, there's a little bit more of a competitive balance between an Alabama program and a Michigan program now. Michigan's gotten better and Alabama's maybe a little bit slightly down across the board from a talent perspective. And so now the matchup looks a lot more even than it did, 5 years ago.
Yeah. And then another thing I thought was interesting and a very good point was Jesse Minter comparing slowing Jalen Milroe to Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, I think, and just that, I think he would know how to stop that type of quarterback, like when he's seen it against practice for all those years. And it's just that is going to be like when you look at this game and this defense for Michigan, we talk about Milroe and Bond and McClellan, and there are so many pieces to that you have to stop. But Minter said that this defense is designed to do that, right? Like they know that they're going to have to play 11 on 11. When you have a running quarterback, he said, you love playing a non-running quarterback, right? Because once they're under the gun and they hand it off, they're essentially playing with 10 offensive players against your 11. But lining up against Milroe, it is 11 versus 11. He can do both things. And he said that Michigan has worked all year and since last year's TCU for that exact to prepare for someone like that.
Yeah, I also think exactly, Tony, but I also think that Michigan's defense is structured because they play zone defense. It's beneficial in this situation. They'll have their eyes on Jalen Milroe for the entire game, pretty much. I mean, they do play some man, of course, but they're predominantly zone, and I think that's helpful again. As it relates to containing Milroe, especially just being able to have a beat on where he's going and keeping your eyes peeled instead of chasing receivers with your back turned and allowing those huge running lanes to develop. And so in some ways, whether they anticipated facing a running quarterback in the playoff or not, the benefit of playing zone defense predominantly should come to the fore in this game against Alabama, just because of the type of player that and the versatility that Milroe presents.
Minter called him like a running back or a linebacker once he does take off, just running with the ball. He's and I was also very impressed. Just side note, that was the first obviously we get to cover JJ and all these guys in Ann Arbor, and I've heard Jalen speak like post game, but he was very poised, very polite, very well thought out. I mean, not that I didn't think he would be, but it's just always fun and interesting to see another quarterback, right? Another leader, how they are perceived, the way they carry themselves. And I was impressed with Max Duggan in the same way last year, right? But that's not surprising. The teams are here for a reason. I guess I'll just ask you quickly, and before we get to some of our favorite moments thus far and wrap this up, you are very plugged in with Alabama. Is that sentiment around Jalen Milroe sort of how it holds in Tuscaloosa? What is the feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general that they've been encouraged by Milroe's development over the course of this year. I also think, from my understanding, that again they had to. I mean, Nick Saban kind of wanted Jalen Milroe to be the quarterback, and Tommy Rees had to figure it out with him. And I think they had to work through some issues to be able to find a reasonable compromise and find the right fit for him and adjust the offense accordingly. And I think it's worked out really well. I do think, going back to kind of what you said about Minter kind of preparing the defense, I think it is interesting that. Again, before the season, we talked about at the Big Ten Media Days, how, again, Michigan brought up this beat Georgia drill. And the fact is that a lot of the things that carried over probably from that drill, carry over to Alabama. Alabama is the inspiration for Georgia, but it's just interesting that the Georgia was a team that they kind of focused on because, again, they had won the 2 national championships. But again, I asked, Milroe about that and what he thought. He's like, well, Alabama's still the standard of college football. And really, it's kind of inarguable in some ways, because even whatever you want to say about Georgia, but they really are kind of a facsimile of Alabama in a lot of ways. Kirby Smart took all of his cues from Nick Saban and everything else. So I think, again, whether Michigan really, should have called it the beat SEC drill, but I think, again, going back to your argument about it, Big Ten versus the SEC, Michigan knew that they're probably going to have to go through the SEC to win a national championship. So everything they've kind of geared towards, the last 3 years, whether it's restructuring the defense, instituting this drill, this beat Georgia drill, was to get to a point where they can go toe-to-toe with the SEC. And we'll finally get to see if they're really – this team that everybody has kind of focused in on is like, the best shot to win a national championship for Michigan can really actually finish the job and get it done and compete at the line of scrimmage with a program like Alabama.
I mean, it's been dang near a year that people have been saying that this is the team, right? After that loss to TCU, once Blake Corum decided to come back, and Keegan and Zinter, of course, he's hurt, and Jenkins and Sane were still, and then you added Josh Wallace, and then all the transfers who come in played big key roles: Barner, Nugent, Henderson, right? And one by one, Josiah Stewart, Wallace, Houseman, James Turner. I mean, it was all for this. It was all directly for this, and here they are. So, and later today, we'll have some video up on various free platforms. It's the Lowry's Beef Bowl. There's going to be a lot of big men eating a lot of food, and so we'll have that too. And the reason I bring that up is because, Reiner, I want to just end this with maybe anything. This is a little more that we like. It's a completely different setting than we normally get to be around the team in, right? Like, yes, they are very focused, but there are times where you can get them a little more smiley. I think I saw Jim Harbaugh smile like 6 times yesterday. Hadn't seen that all year. So, I mean, he was at Disneyland with his family, so it's a happy time. Have you had a couple moments that have stood out, a couple behind the scenes thoughts or anything, just to let the people know what you are looking at and walking around right now?
No, just, again, I really, from a media perspective, it's interesting to see, the national media kind of come in and they have a different perspective than, say, the local guys, and see what questions they're asking and such. And so from that perspective, has been interesting from my standpoint. Obviously I wasn't out there at Disneyland with you, so I think you probably have the best color and you saw the most interesting things from, maybe a more lifestyle or just normal human being standpoint from a player than we typically see at the facility when we interviewed them at Schembechler Hall. So, I'd be curious to see what your takeaways were and what really stood out to you.
Yeah, I put it on my Twitter. Nick Saban getting a horse-drawn carriage ride down Disneyland completed my 2023 bingo card. That was my final square that was missing. So that was incredible. But just after we're leaving and when we're being escorted out, and quarterbacks coach Kirk Campbell, I believe he was with his wife and his kids. He just looked like the most miserable. I mean, just like a Disneyland father who was dealing with like there was something going on. He was probably 50 feet away, but he's like looking stressed. He's got the stroller. He's making sure like the bags are together. And it's like, just to see someone who's like the guy who is helping JJ McCarthy, like maybe become a top 10 pick, right? Someone who's really very integral and a key focal point of this team, just in that complete outside element that they all like to talk about, and just being dad and walking around Disneyland. And then Michael Barrett walking around with a Borg. It's what the new young Gen Z hip kids do these days when they drink alcohol. Generally, they will then but they'll put some alcohol in a big like gallon of water.
I'm aware
flavoring.
Of this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody might not.
No, I don't, but I'm older than you.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm actually very impressed. You know what a Borg is. And so they do it so you can drink, but you also stay hydrated, right? Well, Michael Barrett has eliminated the alcohol part of that and just has a big jug with electrolytes that the training staff has sort of been helping him do. And he says he gets in trouble when he.
Do you have a Borg, Tony? Do you have a Borg?
I've never Borged. I'm too old.
Are you walking around the media room with a Borg?
Yeah, I got
your sorrows away.
My little barista cup. I should. We should get more water because we these days are long. It's a lot of go, but nobody cares about that. These are the fun days that are long. Where else would you rather be in this job? So. Great job, Reiner. I know you have more to write, as do I, and I'll see you downstairs in a little bit. So thanks as well to Andrew Burkle, our sports editor and producer, for jumping on and helping us navigate this ship. He is flying out here tomorrow. Will join us in Pasadena. Very excited about that as well. And then thanks to everybody else who helps make these shows possible. That is editor-in-chief Nicole Avery-Nichols, executive editor Anjanette Delgado, sports editor Kirkland Crawford, and audio engineer Robin Chan. So for Reiner, for Andrew, I'm Tony. This is Hail Yes.